Fire takes first, mercy later. Heat shivers the brittle pines as the ground ticks with resin popping. Rowan said, "Up, Pip, now." Smoke lifts like a black tide and swallows the sun. Birch stamps, and the forest hush breaks into panic. Mara watches from the ridge, patient as stone. Ivy said, "Run for yourself," and vanishes between thorn and ash. Flint lowers his antlers, guarding a path he did not make. Rowan said, "We go through him or we burn." The wind turns cruel, and the crowns begin to torch. Pip stumbles, coughing sparks, and the world shrinks to one narrow breath. Mara said, "Little one, fate is faster than legs." The ridge cracks, the brush gasps a last green, and the fire's mouth widens. Ash drifts like winter as the forest exhales smoke and secrets. Rowan said, "Keep close, little heart." The trail kinks between shale and thorn, where hooves falter. Birch holds the rear, counting breaths like coins. Flint said, "You're slow, and slow burns." Mara slips in and out of the haze as if painted by it. Pip coughs, blinking in the sting, and presses to Rowan's flank. Ivy is gone, and the gap she leaves is hungrier than flame. The wind licks the canyon, choosing which fear to feed. Rowan said, "Left shade and stones, right light and heat." The ground cracks, and the choice feels like a verdict. The fire finds ladders where fear finds doubts. A dead pine sighs and drops a burning limb ahead. Rowan said, through sparks not around them. Birch lowers his antlers, sweeping coals aside. Pip squeaks, and the sound is small enough to break a heart. Mara said, "The smallest stumble writes the end." Flint feints toward the fawn, then flares nostrils at the heat and thinks better. Ash paints everyone as equals. Ivy's absence is a mirror that shows only backs. Rowan said, "Trust the stones, and your feet will follow." The branch collapses, and the path glows like a warning. Heat roars like a crowd that wants blood. The canyon narrows to a throat, and smoke clots there. Rowan said, "Down to the creek bed." Pip tumbles in sand and rises, stubborn as breath. Birch coughs and wavers, then nods at Rowan, a passing of weight. Flint said, "Water won't stop the sky burning." Mara ghosts above on the rim, a shadow that studies choices. The first ember lands on hair, hisses, and dies. Ivy is a rumor carried by wind. Rowan said, "One step, then the next." The fire answers with a tongue that almost touches. The world snaps to two sounds, a rushing like wings and Pip's thin breath. Rowan said, "Hold to me." A gust drives fire down the slope, and the creek becomes a funnel. Birch plants himself where the heat is worst and refuses to move. Flint said, "Turn back or be cooked," but his hooves don't leave. Mara waits, patient as a closing door. Pip presses under Rowan, and the air tastes of coins and rain that will not come. Ivy is gone, but her choice lingers like smoke. Rowan said, "We pass because we must." The fire lowers its head and charges. Ash settles like a tired blanket as the canyon hush returns. Rowan checks Pip's trembling legs. Rowan said, "You breathe, I lead." Birch watches, his chest hitching, and tips his crown toward the dim creek. Pip said, "It hurts inside." Rowan steadies him and listens for the fire's draw like a tide behind stone. Flint paces the gravel and measures chances that feel thinner than air. Mara lingers on the rim, a gold coin eye in smoke. Birch said, "Small steps, many, and we live." Rowan noses a damp root from buried sand and shares its cool with Pip. Flint said, "Share slows you." Rowan lets the jibe drift away like ash that won't land. Pip said, "Will the dark bite me?" Rowan answers with a steady flank and a path of prints that promise return. Mara said, "The dark bites nothing, hunger does." The creek whispers under soot, and hearts begin to keep the same beat. Dawn stains the smoke like old peaches as the creek bed opens to stone shade. Rowan said, "Count with your feet, little heart." Pip mimics her rhythm and steadies, ears lifting with each step. Birch lowers beside them and breathes slow, then nods to the shadowed wall. Birch said, "Rest the heat behind you, not inside you." Flint studies the slope and chooses a watch that flatters pride more than safety. Mara tracks a curve above, neither near nor gone, patience for shelter. Rowan said, "Water is a promise made by stones." She digs again and coaxes a thin thread that tastes of iron and life. Pip said, "It's cold." Rowan smiles in the way a body can, and she lets him drink first. "Flint," said Mercy, "wastes time." Birch turns a weary eye and does not bother to answer. Mara said, "Mercy buys time when luck sells none." The pocket holds while the wind thinks, and their breaths gather strength. Shadows crawl over stone as if the mountain were breathing, and Rowan recalls a winter path cut by a steadier guide. Rowan said, "My mother taught me to map the wind." Pip listens as if maps could be held in teeth. Birch shifts and hides a wince the way old trees hide lightning scars. Flint said, "Maps burn like anything else." Rowan studies the echo of flame on the far ridge and measures gusts between pulses. Mara circles wider, no rush in her step, history in paths that never hurry. Rowan said, "We move when the cough of the fire is weakest." Pip said, "How do you hear it?" Rowan lowers her head and lets silence press until the creek replies. Birch said, "You listen to what is missing and you know the rest." Flint rolls a pebble and watches Pip watch it. Mara said, "The missing often saves what is left." Rowan sets a time in her bones and waits for the count to reach 0. The wind slackens and carries the clean taste of stone, and Birch steps forward as if a gate opened. Birch said, "There is an old burn scar beyond this bend." Rowan hears the weight inside the words and matches pace. Pip said, "Is a scar safe?" Birch lets his breath out and smiles with one torn ear. Birch said, "Where fire ate before, it eats slower now." Flint snorts, uneasy with paths chosen by ghosts. Mara glides along the rim and vanishes behind a snag, a question mark in tawny muscle. Rowan said, "We follow the black to keep our red." They climb a slope speckled with charcoal moons and cracked cones that crumble to powder. Pip said, "I can smell cold." Rowan touches her nose to his and feels steadier than the ground. Flint said, "If the wind turns, run through me, not around me." Birch nods, an old salute given to new bones, and takes the lead for one more rise. At the crest they find a shallow saddle where wind combs the smoke thin, and the world returns in scraps of color. Rowan said, "Names keep us when fear would take us." She names the stones and the bent grass and the pale cloud. Pip said, "Name me brave." Rowan laughs like water that remembers rain and brushes his cheek with her muzzle. Birch stands watch with patience borrowed from hurt years. Flint said, "Brave is a word that runs faster than hooves." Mara reappears, framed by a gap in the rim, and studies their small nation. Rowan said, "Then let the word go first, and we will follow." Pip breathes easier, as if the word had cut a path. Birch said, "When the night comes, we will hold it here." Flint shifts to share the windbreak without making it a gift. Mara said, "Night needs no help to arrive." The sun thins to copper, and their hearts anchor to the living names they have made. The scar behind them smolders, but ahead the forest thickens with unburned fuel waiting its turn. Rowan said, "Danger walks faster than fire." Pip lags, ears drooping, and stumbles on brittle roots. Birch steadies him with a shoulder, then coughs into smoke. Flint said, "Weakness slows us all." Rowan snaps her gaze at him, protective, unyielding. Mara stalks parallel, her body a whisper above the trail, patient eyes measuring fragility. Pip said, "I can walk, I promise." Rowan answers with a nod, though doubt aches in her chest. Birch said, "Fire teaches no patience." Sparks snap overhead as the wind carries embers farther than their steps. Rowan pushes forward, unwilling to yield the path, even as each step feels like theft from tomorrow. The wind claws through crowns and brings the roar closer, a beast that grows with each breath. Rowan said, "We must climb or be caught." Flint stamps, impatient, eyes gleaming like steel. Pip shivers but tries to follow, legs wobbly but determined. Birch drags a hoof, his strength thinning, but he rises with stubborn pride. Mara slips higher on the ridge, her tail a metronome marking each step. Flint said, "Better to shed the weak than lose the strong." Rowan bristles, fury sharp as antlers never grown. Pip said, "I'm not weak," though his voice cracks softer than falling ash. Birch said, "Strength is not only bone." Rowan herds them forward, each motion defying the predator and the fire behind. At the ridge crest, the wind shifts, revealing fire already leaping ahead, cutting escape. Rowan halts, heart pounding like hoofbeats in stone. Rowan said, "We are trapped unless we move faster than fate." Pip collapses briefly, legs folding, chest heaving. Birch lowers his head, nudging Pip upright with desperate tenderness. Flint said, "This is the end for the small." Rowan lashes her tail and blocks him with her body. Mara watches, crouched on a boulder, a poised shadow between mercy and hunger. Pip said, "Please, not yet." Rowan feels the world narrow to his voice. Birch said, "We break through the thinnest flame." Sparks rain like cruel stars, and the path burns shorter with each breath. The slope ahead narrows into a ravine where smoke curls like a living beast. Rowan said, "Through there or nowhere." Birch steadies himself though his lungs fight for air. Pip presses close, small heart beating wild against Rowan's ribs. Flint said, "That passage is death." Rowan growls her defiance, refusing to turn. Mara slinks along the rim, tail twitching, gaze fixed not on Rowan but on Pip. Rowan said, "Better death chosen than death waiting." Birch coughs, nodding, his breath short. Pip said, "I'll try." Rowan gathers her courage, leading him into the smoky throat, every step a wager. Behind them, the fire snarls, unwilling to be denied. Inside the ravine, the air thickens, and breath becomes pain. Rowan said, "Just a little farther." Pip falters, body trembling, but his eyes cling to her silhouette. Birch stumbles, falling to a knee, ash clouding his muzzle. Flint hesitates, torn between survival and loyalty, muscles quivering. Mara tracks from above, a shadow bound to the smoke. Rowan said, "No one falls here." She braces Pip under her chest, forcing him upright. Birch said, "I can hold one more step." The ravine echoes with fire chasing closer, sound like a scream in stone. Pip said, "Don't let go." Rowan tightens her stance, pushing them through as the fire claws at their heels. The ravine spits them out into a hollow blackened by older burns, where life clings stubborn under soot. Rowan halts, heart pounding, sensing a shift deeper than smoke. Pip said, "It smells different here." Birch nods, eyes heavy, recognizing ghosts in the charred ground. Birch said, "This place has burned before." Flint sneers, but unease glints in his stare. Mara prowls the ridge above, tail low, eyes lit not with hunger, but with calculation. Rowan said, "The fire fears what it has already claimed." The hollow whispers with green shoots pushing through ash. Pip noses one tender sprout and smiles weakly. Flint said, "The world cheats us with hope." Birch murmurs, "Or it reminds us what survives." The revelation settles like a new weight. Fire is both destroyer and midwife, and not all endings end. The wind shifts again, not bringing fire, but carrying the scent of others. Rowan stiffens, sensing rivals. Flint said, "The forest feeds more than us." Pip presses against her, wide-eyed ears twitching. Birch groans softly, bracing for what he knows is true. From the smokestep, antlers nearly like Rowan's, sharp and younger, eyes cold as stone. A rival mule deer male, lean and ambitious, locks gaze with Rowan. Flint lowers his head, torn between ally and adversary. Mara slinks higher, tail flicking, savoring tension that doesn't belong to her. Rowan said, "This path is ours." The rival said nothing, but his stance promises he will not yield. Pip trembles, caught between too many shadows. Birch said, "Even now, hunger calls its own war. The hollow is no sanctuary, it is another battlefield." The rival steps forward, his hooves cracking old charcoal, and silence drapes heavier than smoke. Rowan said, "I will not give him." She blocks Pip with her body. Flint bristles, torn by ambition, Ollie, or challenger. Birch groans, strength breaks when divided. Pip said, "Why does he want us?" Rowan steadies her voice, low as stone. Rowan said, "Because survival counts what it can take." The rival lowers antlers, muscles twitching, the air trembling with impending clash. Mara prowls above, lips curling in silent amusement. Flint said, "Fight or fall," eyes gleaming at his own reflection in the rival's stance. Rowan's heart pounds. This is no fire, but it burns just as sure. Birch steadies himself, ready to fall if it gives Pip one more chance. The hidden truth is sharp. Threats are not only flame. The rival charges, hooves tearing soot into clouds. Rowan braces, muscles taut as bowstring. Pip squeals, pressed into her belly. Birch said, "Hold, daughter of fire," his voice broken but firm. Rowan meets the rival with a crash of antlers and bodies, though hers are smaller, weaker. Flint circles, breath sharp, deciding whether to join or steal. Mara crouches, tail twitching, her hunger not for flesh but for spectacle. Rowan said, "I will not yield." The rival snarls, pressing, testing her resolve. Sparks leap from crushed branches, under hooves. Pip said, "Rowan, don't fall." Birch groans, his knees buckling, but his gaze is proud. Flint said, "One breaks, one rises." The fight carves truth into the ash. Survival is chosen, not granted. Rowan falters, antlers slipping, body quaking under the rival's strength. Pip cries out, "Don't leave me." Something ignites deeper than fire, resolve stronger than ash. Rowan twists, finding leverage in desperation, and shoves back. Birch raises his head, voice ragged. The weak endure when love steadies them. Flint steps closer, torn, teeth bared but no blow struck. Mara licks her lips, eyes wide with intrigue. The rival staggers, caught by Rowan's surge, balance breaking. Rowan said, "This path is ours." The rival crashes to ash, not dead, but beaten. Pip presses against Rowan, tears of smoke streaking his face. Flint exhales, relief tangled with envy. Birch closes his eyes, proud. Mara said, "Truth hides in the smallest bones." The hollow holds silence again, not peace but the weight of revelation. The air sharpens with flame reborn, racing through crowns toward the hollow. Rowan said, "We move now." Pip stumbles, hooves dragging, but clings to her flank. Birch rises with pain burning brighter than embers, each step heavy but certain. Flint growls. The fire doesn't wait for courage. Mara stalks along the rim, eyes lit by firelight, a witness to fate. Defeated rival limps away, smoke swallowing him. Pip said, "It's faster than us." Rowan answers, "Then we are faster than fear." Sparks rain down, landing in their coats, searing reminders of time. Birch said, "The mountain falls one stone at a time, but still it falls." Rowan leads into the burning slope, heart pounding like war drums. Behind them, the forest screams as fire consumes its own. The slope becomes a gauntlet, as fire races down slope like a predator. Rowan said through the gap, "Quick." Pip squeals, smoke-stinging eyes, but keeps running. Birch staggers, forcing legs to obey his will. Flint charges ahead, strength unyielding, but his glance betrays fear. Mara shadows, muscles rippling, waiting for the stumble that fate always gives. Pip said, "It's too hot." Rowan shields him, her body absorbing sparks. Birch said, "Every scar is a mark of survival." Flames leap across their path, forcing a choice. Flint said, "We turn back or we burn." Rowan snarls, "Forward is the only way." Embers whirl like stars fallen to earth, choking air and hope alike. Climax gathers like a storm with no escape. The fire roars downhill like a charging herd, blocking their escape. Rowan halts, eyes blazing, breath ragged. Rowan said, "We break through." Pip clings to her, shivering, body drenched in sweat and ash. Birch steadies, his knees trembling but unbroken. Flint said, "That wall kills us all." Rowan stamps the ground, defiance ringing in every motion. Mara crouches low, waiting for their ruin. Pip said, "Rowan, I'm scared." She answers, "Fear runs, we fight." Birch lifts his antlers weakly, nodding once as if to pass his life to them. Rowan charges, a small body against an ocean of fire. Flint snarls, following, despite doubt. Sparks swallow the air, and the forest screams louder than hearts can bear. They plunge into the fire's edge, heat searing skin, smoke stabbing lungs. Rowan said, "Hold to me." Pip squeezes tight, eyes closed, his world narrowed to her heartbeat. Birch follows, coughing blood into soot, but still pushing. Flint roars his fury, hooves hammering sparks into the earth. Mara trails like shadow and flame, patient and unstoppable. Pip said, "It burns." Rowan answers, "Pain is not the end." Birch stumbles, falters, but drags himself upright. Flames lick their coats, singeing hair and leaving scars. "Flint," said one more stride. Rowan throws herself forward, carrying Pip through smoke like a banner. Behind them, the fire claims what strength cannot escape. They burst from the fire's throat into a clearing, scarred and smoking, bodies trembling. Rowan collapses to knees, Pip sliding under her, still alive. Pip said, "We made it." Birch falls beside them, chest heaving, eyes clouded but proud. Flint stands tall, sides heaving, defiance glowing. Mara appears at the edge, watching, not attacking, her hunger muted by awe. Rowan said, "This is survival's cost." Pip nuzzles her, eyes wet, body shaking. Birch said, "Legacy is breath passed forward." Rowan closes her eyes, the world spinning, but Pip's warmth grounds her. Flint snarls, "We're not finished yet." The climax ebbs, leaving silence louder than flame. Above them, smoke clears enough to reveal a sky still alive, still indifferent. Silence presses heavier than flame as the clearing cools, smoke weaving like ghosts. Rowan steadies Pip against her flank, each breath rasping. Pip said, "Why is it so quiet?" Birch lies still, sides shuddering, eyes fixed on stars through ash. Birch said, "The fire has eaten its fill." Flint paces the edge, restless, ears twitching to phantom sounds. Mara sits at the tree line, gaze softer than hunger, her body a shadow between endings. Rowan said, "Quiet means the world is counting what remains." Pip nuzzles Birch's muzzle, tears glinting. Birch exhales slow, his voice no louder than wind, "Carry the steps I can't." The night folds around them, and grief joins survival like a twin. The night deepens, every sound magnified. A crack of settling timber, a cough from Birch, Pip's fragile breaths. Rowan said, "Rest just for now." Pip curls against her, eyelids heavy. Flint mutters, "Rest is weakness when the world is still burning." Mara watches him, her tail flicking, eyes unreadable. Birch shifts painfully, lifting his head with effort. Birch said, "Strength is knowing when to stop." His body trembles, yet his tone is steady, old as mountains. Rowan closes her eyes, ears tilted to the dark, guarding even in stillness. Pip said, "Will the fire come back?" Rowan answers softly, "Not tonight." The air tastes of smoke, but also of survival, bitter and real. Dawn comes pale, bleeding weak light into the smoke. Rowan rises stiffly, her body marked with burns. Pip stirs, eyes blinking, and leans against her. Rowan said, "The day waits for no one." Birch struggles to his knees, breath ragged but eyes determined. Birch said, "The sun has always been my healer." Flint stamps the earth, impatient, searching horizons. Mara drifts closer, less predator now, more witness to endurance. Pip said, "The light looks softer." Rowan nods. "It is mercy after fire." Birch coughs but manages a smile. Rowan steadies him with her shoulder. Even scarred, the day feels like promise written in smoke. The group moves slowly across a landscape scarred black, yet softened by mourning. Rowan leads, each step measured. Pip hops lightly the weary, his spirit reborn by dawn. Birch lags, shoulders heavy, but pride drives him on. Flint said, "Ash covers everything, but it hides nothing." Mara trails behind, not chasing, not leaving, bound to their path like shadow. Rowan said, "The fire is gone, but its teeth remain." Pip noses a green shoot breaking through ash. Pip said, "Life grows again." Birch exhales with wonder, "Yes, and so will we." The silence shifts from mourning to endurance, a fragile bridge toward tomorrow. At the crest of a ridge, the world opens wide, valleys gray with ash, peaks gold with sunrise. Rowan halts, Pip at her side, their silhouettes carved by light. Pip said, "It's beautiful." Rowan answers, "Because it lived." Birch sinks down exhausted, his breath shallow but his smile wide. Birch said, "I have given my part, take the rest and walk it farther." Flint watches, chest heaving, the fire reflected in his eyes no longer flame but memory. Mara stands tall on a rock, her gaze endless, bearing witness. Rowan said, "We endure, and that is enough." Pip leans into her warmth as the wind lifts, carrying not smoke, but the first clean air. Dawn arrives thin and undecided, and the ridge holds still like a held breath. Rowan tastes the air and finds it cleaner, but edged with yesterday. Pip said, "Do we go home now?" Rowan answers, "We go where life remains." Birch's chest rises slow, a tide that forgets to return. Birch said, "The light is gentler than fear." Flint circles once, scraping ash as if drawing a hard line. Mara sits on the rock, tail still, eyes patient as winter. Rowan said, "We rest until the wind chooses us." Pip presses into her warmth and listens for promises under ribs. Birch smiles with the corner of his mouth, and watches the sky bruise to pink. Flint said, "Waiting invites rivals." Rowan does not look at him, and that is answer enough. Mara said, "Rivals wait where fear sits longest." The valley answers with the soft murmur of wings that survived the fire. The day opens like a lid, and what remains remembers its names. They descend from the ridge, step by careful step, and the ground grows softer than grief. Rowan said, "We cross the black to find the green." Pip skips once, then steadies, chastened by his own joy. Birch walks between breaths, as if each were a hill to climb. Birch said, "Leave my weight where the ash can keep it." Flint scans the horizon, and finds no shape to fight but himself. Mara glides along an angled path, neither shepherd nor threat, only witness. Rowan said, "The creek will remember us if we remember it." Pip noses a chute, and hums a small sound he learned from the wind. Birch laughs, a sound like bark split by thaw. Flint said, "Hope dulls teeth." Rowan answers, "Teeth tire first." A jay calls from a black stick that once was a tree, and now is a throne. The call is rude and brave, and it dares the world to disagree. Clouds gather like sheep that forgot their shepherd, and a shy rain begins to stitch the air. Rowan lifts her face and lets the drops count scars. Pip said, "It tastes like stone and sleep." Birch closes his eyes and leans into the water as if leaning into a memory. Birch said, "The sky remembers what the ground lost." Flint snorts and looks away, but the rain tames even his edges. Mara blinks slow as a cathedral, and lets the water clean the smoke from her whiskers. Rowan said, "This is the forest healing us without asking our names." Pip dances a small circle and returns sheepish but glowing. Birch laughs again, and the sound returns from the hills. "Flint," said Rain, "hides tracks." Rowan answers, "It also makes new ones." The drops darken ash into ink that writes tomorrow on the soil. The wind softens, and the ridge sighs like a wound closing. When the rain eases, Birch lowers to the ground, as if setting down a pack carried too far. Rowan kneels beside him and lets her breath match his. Pip said, "Do not sleep yet." Birch smiles and brushes Pip with a tired nose. Birch said, "Sleep is only a longer blink." Flint stands close enough to share warmth without confessing it. Mara climbs the nearest rock and becomes a statue made of patience. Rowan said, "You taught us the scar walks slower." Birch's eyes hold a sky that is wider than leaving. Birch said, "Take the wind I saved and spend it well." Pip shakes as if cold, but fear is the only weather. Rowan presses her forehead to his and listens to the old drums slow. Flint said, "I will keep the rear." Mara said nothing, but her silence stands guard. Final breath is gentle, and the world does not break, but it changes. They bury nothing because the forest keeps its own, and ash is both blanket and altar. Rowan rises, lighter and heavier, and sets her body like a compass. Pip said, "Where do we go now?" Rowan answers, "We follow the names we made." Flint steps behind without speaking and takes the place Birch left, a stone learning to be a wall. Mara descends from her watch and walks parallel, no longer shadow, not yet sun. Rowan said, "The ridge remembers those who walked it true." Pip nods as if his bones understand before his mind can. The wind changes and tastes of grass that will be, not grass that was. Ivy is only a direction where not to look. Flint said, "I will see what you cannot see." Rowan accepts without ceremony, and that is their pact. They move, small against the map, but the map flexes to let them through. The forest closes its eyes and keeps the secret of who stayed.